Okay, guys, it's Friday, the normal live. Say the normal. This is like third Friday in a row. I think I'm doing the lives. I'll try to get on a little bit earlier today, so hopefully they'll get a different crowd in. Yeah, ask away if you've got questions. I'm going to warm up my handstand. I haven't done anything yet, so let's see what we're dealing with today. It's 10 a.m. in Perth at the moment, so I'm just warming up hamstrings. I'm going to get my handstand happy. And then if we get some questions in for presses, handstand push-ups, planches, one-arm handstand, whatever it is, I should be good to go to demo stuff. So normal warm-up, just a little bit of wrist prep, open and closing the hips, open and closing the shoulders, make sure I've got under balance, over balance, side to side, some bent arm. Did train handstand push-ups yesterday, but doesn't feel too bad. Press is there, we're good to go. So anyone who pops on, ask away for any questions, handstand related. I did get one question in the comment that I didn't get around to answer last live I'd done from Axel, I think that is. Got a question. I've been training handstand for more than 6 months, but can never seem to grasp the feeling of balancing with my hands at all. My body awareness is terrible and I can't feel the same stack I have when standing. Doing handstand training. Don't feel any progression with balancing at all. Shoulder strength increase a lot though. Is there anything else I can do except training for years? Yeah, I mean, just play around with your basic handstand drills. Obviously using the wall as much as you need to. Increasing the conditioning, so make sure that your chest all time is going up. So basically you just hold here for longer. Also when you're balancing, a lot of mistake is very, very common is people demand a position that's out of their grasp in terms of mobility. So they try to get into a handstand position and balance this, but they actually can't get into that position mobility wise. So allowing your body to be a little bit more relaxed but still have that one segment so the body acts as one piece is really, really important. So when we're doing the wall drills, so if I kick up to the wall, I don't want to be like squeezing everything and trying to using all my energy just to create that line. I might be a little bit more relaxed. The body's still acting as one piece. And now when I push through my fingers, I've got some connection. And even though I'm not looking so clean in terms of a line, the connection is actually better. So you want to feel that that connection between your hands and your feet is really good. So whatever you're doing at the base is talking to the hands and vice versa. Also doing lots of things like crow arm balances, things lower down to the floor where the body's easier to create one piece, but it's easier to feel the control. So I can go in my crow position here and I can take my toes down to the floor. I can take my head down to the floor. I can just move around in that position. I can start to feel and understand balance and also get a connection between the body being one piece and the balance. So I hope that helps. I mean, I've got lots of videos as well on learning to handstand, like the basics stuff. And if you really look into the handstand training, everyone has been using the same drills for years and years and years. So the heel pull drills, the toe pull drills, the chest pull handstands, those type of things have been trained for a long time. So my dog's going crazy. So yeah, stick with the basics, trust the process, stick with whatever level you're at and don't try and push beyond that. Okay, we've got some questions coming in. What muscles do you engage when you start to fall forward? Rosie. She's watching the world go by and getting upset. I don't know why. Okay, let's have a look. What muscles do you engage when you start to fall forwards and can't push back enough with the fingers? I feel like I need to hinge back with the hips, but can't quite make the connection. Yeah, the trouble is with the overbalance is there's literally not that much you can do once you've gone to a certain point. It's exactly the same on your toes. So if I go towards underbalance, I have very limited range to go here. Like there's a point of no return. So when I get to here, doesn't matter what I do, I'm going to fall over. So the goal with the handstand is actually not to be in your overbalance. We want to try and be in your handstand that's slightly back towards underbalance. So when I'm handstanding, it might look like I'm a straight line, but I'm actually hanging back slightly towards underbalance. As soon as I go towards overbalance and now my weight's in my fingers, there's not that much I can do if if I tip over that point. So there's a lot more of a cliff edge for the overbalance than there is for the underbalance. Exactly the same on our feet. We've got the majority of our weight like in our heels, in the balls of our feet. We don't go into our toes. As soon as we go into our toes, that's last resort. So I'm trying to stay here, be a little bit more softer and be back slightly. And that way I've got way more room for error towards this direction, the underbalance, but I don't have much overbalance. So as long as you're training these type of drills, pulling away from the wall, and you can get to a point where you can get to handstand and go back to the wall, and you can start to play with going further away from the wall. But even then, when I go into this position, I might actually be towards underbalance because the majority of my weight is still pushed out this direction beyond my hands. So even though I'm pulling from the wall for an overbalanced drill, I'm actually still hanging out quite a bit in underbalance. So that's a big one. But making sure that you can pull on and off the wall. How translatable is the tuck L sit to handstand to stool to press? How to build the bridge from one to the other? So it's very transferable, because what we want to think about is the hip position and the shoulder position. So whenever you do anything where the hip is lower, so if I'm in even like a crow to handstand, so in this position, my hip is now lower than my shoulders. So if you imagine my legs were straight in the straddle position there, that hip position is very similar. Look, my arms are nearly straight as well, so I can really mimic that position. Now the hip level's the same, and I can go up to handstand there, which is very similar to the stool to press. The same as if I go into a L-sit position. That low hip position is very important. So a really cool way of doing it, because most people can get up either by using some bent arm or bent leg position to go up to their stooler. But they can't go up with straight legs in the like a standard stooler position. So if they can't go from straight legs up to handstand, so if you can't do that, you could use bent arms, you could use bent legs, whatever you need to get up for the concentric. And then when you do the eccentric, so when you come back down, so if I give myself a breather a second. So if I go from, say, an L sit here through up to handstand, but now I do a slow eccentric, stool to back down. My hands are now too wide to get into a nice straddle out. But you get the idea. So you could do the eccentric with the harder variation, but the concentric with the easier variation. That even works for standing press handstand. So just use bent arms, bent legs on the way up, get up, whichever technique you need, but it's super clean on the way down for the eccentric. Cool. Hi, Paul. Do you do any lessons in person? Yeah, I teach. I've only got one class on my weekly schedule at the moment. So in Perth, I teach one class in person. And then I'm teaching at the moment about 5 or 6 privates per week. I've pulled right back on my privates now, but I still do them. So I do that. And then I also do the occasional Zoom sessions as well. So one-on-one Zoom sessions. They're just tricky to fit in, especially when people are on different time zones. But yes, I am doing one-on-one sessions. I do workshops, classes when I can. And then, if I've got availability one-on-ones, either north of Perth, so in Alkimos area, or I do go to the city on a Saturday, but I'm normally fully booked on that morning. But yeah, reach out if you're in Perth or interested in doing a Zoom session or something. Do you think it's a good idea to alternate my training methods by focusing on powerlets for 1 month and then using just the bare hands for the next month? Yes, I think it's good to definitely play with both. I probably wouldn't do it that way, though. I probably wouldn't cut out hands completely and go to powerlets unless you've got a wrist injury or some reason for needing to do that. I would do a bit of both all the time. So a cool way of doing it is to do, like, if you're training handstand push-ups, you could do P-bars for your deficit handstand push-ups. So they work really well. And that way you're working on your handstand balance on the P-bars, but you're also doing the floor work for handstands as well. So you've got the best of both. The risk is if you spend too much time with one and then go over to the other, your learning curve sort of just goes down. Your progression line will go down when you do the swap over. and then you get to a certain point and then you go back down again. I'd prefer to do like a mix of both and have the ability to do both. And that's what I've done with my training. It's what I've done with using the handstand blocks as well. So doing like one-arm drills. That was really good for the wrists, just because when you are learning a one-arm handstand, there's so much volume. So just giving your wrist a different position is really good. A different grip. So if I've got flat hands compared to holding a block, so that's much easier mobility-wise, and I can sort of pull myself around similar to P-bars. So swapping between them is a really good idea. Like at the moment, I'm doing a lot of my shoulder training and my planche work on the P-bars. One, it's easier for most people to planche further forwards on the P-bars, but also just to mix it up and allow me to play with different ideas, especially because I'm doing so much strength work at the moment. So I'm alternating bent arm, straight arm nearly every day now. So I just have to be a little bit careful that I'm not pushing the body too much in the wrists and things and doing the same thing. So I think it's a good idea, but I would just mix it up either session to session or day to day. Awesome. Thank you, buddy. He's just saying he's appreciating the videos. Send in more questions, guys. I'm going to stop for a second, take my mic away from my mouth so you don't hear me drink my coffee. So any other questions, any other demos, any other people got concerns with their training or questions with their training? Are they stuck with anything? What are people stuck with? What core exercises translate the most to the presses? I wouldn't do that much specific core work. I wouldn't call it core work, but there's certain exercises like toes to bar are fantastic for press work because you're bringing the hip and the legs together. Any of the compression work stuff, you know, the pike lifts. So just these horrible exercises, these ones, the same in the straddle position, that type of thing is really good. Most people don't actually need, for press handstand specifically, that you don't need that much core. So a lot of people think it's core. So because what happens is we think about bringing the torso and the legs together. So if we're lacking flexibility and we're trying to bring the legs in towards the hands, we think to ourselves we need to push down and really squeeze the body into compression. But if you've got enough flexibility, you can get into this position. So I'm not activating any core in this position. I'm not activating any core in this position now. It's all my shoulders and upper back. So then when I press, all I'm doing now is opening up with my posterior chain, same as a deadlift, how I pick that up off the floor. It's all the muscles in the back that lifts the legs up. I'm not actually bringing the legs to the torso. Now, obviously, the core is firing in some way, and it all depends what you classify as the core as well. But I wouldn't think about specifically isolating that. Now, if you're very new to handstands, I would be doing things like hollow body holds, plank type work if you can't do it in a handstand. But as much as possible, I'd be working slow eccentric presses, mobility work to get into that higher hip position, so you get more of a stacked position in the press. But I wouldn't be doing specific core exercises, if that makes sense. How to prevent handstand chest falling. So if that's under balance, I'm assuming, so by handstand chest falling, I'm assuming that when you're in that position, you're saying you're falling down under balance. So if you're in your handstand there, you're falling this way and always coming down to that position. So I would just train the total exercise. So being this way, become an expert at this. So be able to pull away. Notice how I'm not going to the wall when I do that movement. I'm not doing this. I'm not sinking back towards the wall. I'm pulling away from the wall. So the hips and shoulders are going forwards. My toes become light. And now I've come off the wall. And then I can go back again. That's what we need to learn. So then when we're in this position, we can also be there. Look, I'm under balanced, but I haven't come down because my shoulders are going forwards. I'm going a bit planchy, and that's what stops me coming down. So just becoming an expert at that exercise, video yourself from the side so you can see what you're doing. And then everything will become evident on whether you're collapsing back to the wall or you're coming away from the wall. When doing a handstand, where should you look? So 99% of people should look down between their index fingers, somewhere like that. So if I'm doing a handstand here, see this line on the mat there? I'm going to have my fingers there. I'm going to be looking on that line, and I keep it exactly the same. So if I'm in that kick up position, if I'm in a jump position, if I'm in a press position, notice the eyes always look the same. And then I'm going to kick up really slowly. My focal point stays exactly the same the whole time. That's even probably a little bit further forwards for me. I'd come back just a little bit more towards the thumbs. But most people need to be somewhere between their index finger and their thumb, something like that, in that position. What we don't want to do is change that. So what you don't want to do is kick up and then suddenly look behind you, which is really common for beginners and things when they're looking at the wall, because you're scooping all the head and shoulders away, you're moving the base suddenly. So you want to kick on top of the base, and suddenly if you quickly move the base out of the way, you're going to struggle. So fixing a point, have something to look at works really well. So like I just looked at that line, but so maybe something you can move around. So just look like put a coin or something on the floor, then you can move it slightly, but constantly look at it. So doing the setup, doing the kick up, doing the jump, whatever it is, then in the handstand itself. And if it doesn't feel right, fine tune it. What are your thoughts on stretching drills that last for 2 minutes each muscle? I'm a big fan of long duration stretching, but I wouldn't do it during the training session. I would do 60 seconds, but no more than 60 seconds. If you're resting more than 60 seconds in a static position, I think that potentially could alter your handstand when you're going into your handstand afterwards, or your strength work, whatever you're doing. But 1 minute plus stretching, or if you want to call it something else like visiting the position, I recommend that everyone does that. So in the evenings, sit in your straddle position, watch TV and straddle, raise your hips up so you make yourself comfortable, but hang out in that position. And the same with the, if you really want to increase your hamstring stretches, your hamstring flexibility, I would hang out in that position. So, something like a yin yoga class or something where they're holding positions for long periods of time, using bolsters, making yourself really comfortable and hanging out there, I think is really good. But it needs to be done as a standalone practice, and it's a time thing. I don't think most people, especially if they're doing calisthenics, don't have enough time to do, a bunch of yin classes as well. So I'd recommend they're doing their yin style training, or whatever you want to call it, their long duration stretches that aren't that intense, but they last a long time, away from their training. Like someone who has very, very tight hamstrings, maybe they've had a disc bulge or something like that, going into a position where they've got a door frame. So this isn't the door frame, but it works as well. So this ridge in the wall, I would give someone this exercise minus the dog in that position to lengthen this hamstring, and I would give them a 5-minute hold in that position. So there's times to use it, but I wouldn't use it between your sets in training. I would do like 60 seconds max, and then jump up, go into your next set. Thanks for the tips about slide away last time. I've managed to peel my legs off the wall, but then when I try to straighten the body, I immediately fall to overbalance. Yeah, so just remember, when you do come off the wall on any of the balance drills, only go up to the position that you can hold in your balance window. So it might not be pushing up to a handstand, and watch the momentum. So it might not be pushing up to a straight handstand. So like if I'm this way and I pull away from the wall, I might pull to this. And that's my handstand. That's the best I can do at the moment. That's fine. And then go back to the wall again. Over time, we want to push up to a straighter position and go back. Same thing when I do the overbalance drill. We might have a position that's not fully extended up to handstand. So it might be like this. And then I learn to go back to the wall. And then over time, it's going to get straighter. But if I try to do that straighter position too quickly, I'm going to tend to go overbalance. And the other thing that will happen is if I go too quick this way, momentum takes me off. Because I need to use quite a bit of energy to pull down the wall and go that way, my momentum is taking me that way. So when I get to handstand, I still have a little bit of momentum that carries me over towards the overbalance. So what's that speed? That's really, really common, that you'll just go over and just carry on going over. Can I share a routine of exercises to learn handstand? I've got multiple videos showing that. And it's not actually that complicated in terms of hard to find. There's lots of people that list very basic handstand exercises in a program format. I've got follow-along classes, beginner handstands. I've got like a 30-minute video on my YouTube if you search for it, a beginner handstand class. And that just goes through everything I teach in a class environment to someone. Obviously, it depends on what level you're at. But most people just need to do a flexibility warm-up. They need to do chest to wall handstand in some way. So conditioning holds in the handstand to build the capacity to hold the position, line drills, and then go into kick-ups to the wall, and then pull in from the wall back to the wall. And if you're then strong enough or confident enough, turn around and do the chest to wall, pulling away from the wall. That's it. I wouldn't do any more than that when you're learning. And then as soon as you start to float in the handstand a little bit, then you can start to integrate the kick-ups in the middle of the room. But I would just be pulling them away from the wall to holds first. So really, really basic, but search my YouTube channel and you'll see there's lots of free content on there with classes and stuff. Video keeps stalling. Apologies if that is happening for everyone. I don't know if it's your end or my end. L-sit workout routine. So L-sit workout routine is super simple. You need to check that you've got the flexibility. So can you sit? If I want to do an L-sit, so most people's goal with an L-sit is to do a 90-degree at the hip position. So to be here and then lift up in that position in an L-sit. Now to be able to do that, I can't have flexibility like this. I need to have flexibility like this. So I need to be able to sit nice and upright with a flat in that position. So that position here is that position. So making sure that you can have a flat back with your knees locked backwards. So number one, we need to get into that position so we have enough flexibility to get there. Once you've got that, you can then start to do the L-sit hold. Now, most people, when they do the L-sit hold, are going to need to raise their hands up in some way so they can bend their knees so their feet can come underneath them. And then I would just do hold times here. So if you're new to it, aim for 10 seconds to start with in this position. And then when that becomes easy, 10 seconds with the legs straighter, until eventually you can lock the knees backwards. Just be careful that you're not leaning backwards too far as well. So, and then once you go in 10-second holds, you could work up to 30 seconds, and then you could do extra sets back to 10 seconds where you're trying to even go more towards like a V-sit type position. So basically just trying to bring the torso and the legs closer to each other. But again, that can be super simple. You can add it into your other training or just put it at the end. Most people don't have the flexibility to get into the positions that they're trying to get into. So then it feels 100 times harder because they're having to replace the flexibility with strength, trying to compress the legs and the torso towards each other. So making sure your hamstrings are long. So make sure you're locking the knees backwards when you do your stretches. I really struggled to touch my toes when I first started this style of training. And by increasing my hamstring flexibility, like everything just became so much easier, so much more efficient. What we got? Will the chest to wall toe tip drill help me to unlock the press to handstand? Yes, definitely. So the chest to wall under balance drill, taking the shoulders in one direction, is so important for all of the handstand exercises. So it's super important for handstand balance, super important for press, super important for handstand push up. So if you can get into this position, which is the position in your toe pull when you slide down the wall. So it's that position here, and be strong there to be able to open and close the shoulder in that position. Then when you go to do press handstand, look, it's that same position. Look, I've got that position there. So I've made that sweet spot so strong for me that I can always find it and I can hold in that position. It doesn't matter what my legs do. So that's what we want to do. So making that position super strong will then be your start position for your handstand push-up when you come up and down to create the triangle, and also press handstand like I just demoed there. How long will it take to go from handstand to handstand press generally, you think? That's like completely impossible to answer. Some people get it really quick. They tend to be people that either come from other things that carry over really well. So they've got a very strong yoga practice, but they're also strong. And normally they'll get a press and a handstand pretty quickly. Obviously, ex-gymnasts, people like that will get things really quick. Most people, it's going to take 6 months to start balancing a handstand with any sort of control where they can start to work towards press. And then it depends on flexibility and strength. And you're probably looking at, I don't know, it's impossible for me to really say because everyone's totally different. But if you're allowed, say, 18 months and you train consistently, you should be pretty close to eccentric presses and be able to hold a handstand for 10 to 30 seconds. But like I say, it's really impossible for me to say because everyone's totally different. But I believe everyone can do it. You just have to go on your path. And a lot of people, I often get people coming to handstand class and they'll make good progress to start with because they come into one class per week. But then their progress starts to go down. Well, not, they don't decrease, but they plateau off because the one class a week isn't enough. So then they have to do 2 other practices per week to get up to that next level. But then to get to a press handstand, you probably need to be training 5 times a week. So you got to keep training in that way to keep getting the results. How would you recommend learning tuck planche to handstand? I mean, planche press through the shoulders slowly. Does tuck jump to handstand help build up the necessary strength? Yeah, tuck jump can help. Like it will show you some of the pathway. The downside with anything with a jump is that it's you're passing quickly through the range of motion or through the pathway. So you're skipping time under tension. What we want to do is ideally come down through slow eccentrics. So something like a crow to handstand can work quite well. So even though you're bending the arms when you go up, obviously having a strong tuck planche. So we need to make sure that we have super strong tuck planche already and can hold this for time. We need to be able to train something like crow to handstand. See, the hip height is very similar. And I can either bend the arms a lot with that one or I can go straighter arms. And then I can go handstand and then lower down, round in the upper back, come down, and I can land on the elbows or I could hold the tuck planche there. But that's just really good on getting time under tension through the full range of motion. I've got a couple of videos specifically on that, going through lots of different exercises, but they're the main ones. Slow eccentrics, spending time throughout the movement. Use a concentric where you can go quite slow up and then make it really clean on the eccentric because you're stronger on it. Okay, coffee time a minute. Have you got a video specifically on improving hamstring flexibility? Yeah, I've got 2 or 3. Just search my content, or I think I've done a hamstring one not that long ago. I was wondering, would holding a sumo squat actually help with flexibility? Yeah, any squat is going to help flexibility. Squats are really good. I'm more of a fan. I really like Cossack squats. I think they're really good. And the beauty with the Cossack squat is you just can change the depth as you warm up into it. So, talking from a old body's point of view, so I'm 47 years old, my hips, even though I stretch all the time, they seem to always get tight. So to warm up, if I'm doing something like a easy variation of a Cossack squat, so I'm just coming up and down, this way I'm getting into hamstrings, adductors, calves, and everything on this side, especially if I'm keeping the foot down and trying to keep the torso upright. And then this one's going to get more into glutes, hamstrings for the squat position. So this one's like doing the squat, this one's doing the adductor and the hamstring with a straight leg, and then it's getting the best of both. And then as you warm into it, you can floss around a little bit more in that position and just keep getting deeper and deeper. And then once I've warmed up, I can go all the way to the floor. So I prefer that type of one because it's a little bit more dynamic and hits so many things at once. But any squat variation, in terms of mobility, as long as you're hitting the main muscle groups and you're doing the one that you enjoy the most, that's going to give you the most benefit, because flexibility and hanging out in positions, is all about time. So we want to spend time in those positions. So if you don't like doing the one I just showed because you feel an idiot doing it or whatever, then that's not the stretch for you. You should pick a different one. So, and that's most of the exercises are that way. If you don't find a drill that you gel with, swap it for another one. You know, if you got a coach, ask that coach, say, is there a different variation? I don't like this for this reason. And then because it's consistency that gets you all these skills. How to get a tuck press handstand with straight arms. So tuck press with straight arms, you need to access a press to handstand in some way first. Normally a tuck press isn't the first one because it has a lower hip position. So I would go through a straddle press for most people because it's the quickest way to get a press handstand, even if it's a bit froggy, so you bend the knees a little bit. So once you have that press, then we can start to eccentric down to the negative. See that I put the hip down a little bit more. I can start to go like a hybrid between the two, where I'm more like this position, going up, and then make it more like a tuck there, and then you just go towards the version that you want to get to. So try and find the quickest way to get the press handstand for you that fits your body type, especially around mobility, and then slowly decrease, or not decrease, slowly work towards the tuck variation that you want to get, or work out what the small increments are to it, as opposed to going from a high stacked hip press handstand to a super low tuck. The gap's too big. But any type of tuck press is really dependent on planche. So having a strong tuck planche, strong protraction, super important. Just make sure with your tuck planche work across the board, any of your planche work, that is all about protraction and not pushing through your upper back and not collapsing through the scapula anyway, because that's just going to cause like a weakness later on when you try and stack something harder. Do you recommend training for handstand push-up and press to handstand, even if I have 15-second handstand? Will it help with underbalance? Yes, so I would always, well, ideally, as long as you've got the time to do it, I would always be working handstand balance, a strength component for both bent arm and for straight arm. So that could be a handstand push-up drill, it could be a press drill. If you're not strong enough to do a handstand push-up drill, it could be a pike push-up drill. If it's a pike push-up drill, or if a pike push-up's too hard, a push-up drill. So just working out what bent arm exercise that you're up to, and then working that, and then making that, slowly progressing that at the same time as doing your handstand balance. Because the other thing can happen, you can get someone like who comes maybe just from calisthenics that hasn't done very much handstand balance, and they're super strong, but then they get super frustrated because they want a freestanding handstand push-up or press handstand, but because their handstand balance is lacking, they can't do it, but they have the strength. But if you give them the balance, then suddenly they have the strength to do the other bits. So as best you can, I would try and raise the progressions on all of those things at the same time, but just be careful that you're not trying to juggle too many balls at once, because the progression line would just be so low across the board. It'll be frustrating and you might not make progress. How do I stop bananaing when handstand push-up toes to wall? So if you're bananaing, it either means you're not strong enough and you're starting to collapse and you're starting to point your chest towards the floor. So you want to think, you maybe walk up the wall on your concentric. So it's really, really common. So ideally in a handstand push-up, when we come down, we will stay in a positive position. So we want to be this way, not this way. What we don't want to be doing in a handstand push-up is coming down like this and then pushing up in extension. See, my chest has come down. So now I'm putting so much weight on the wall when I come back up. Ideally, I want to be more positive this way, so I have less weight on the wall, and then it's easy to come back up. Now, if that's too hard, when I come to here, I could step on the wall, or like walk up the wall on the way back up, and that's going to promote me to stay more this way with the hips and less leaning against the wall. What we don't want to do is sag back against the wall when we're trying to come back up. So it could be strength related, it could be technique related, flexibility. So you could be arching way too much in the position. So you need to do a little bit of an assessment, see what's going on. But yeah, hopefully that helps. I've been told I have bad lumbar spine flexibility. So if I try to do face to wall eccentric handstand, to straddle with my bum contacting the wall. I'm not sure 100% what you mean there. So your chest to wall. So it's an eccentric press drill, but your chest to wall. So your face to wall. Yeah. So I'm not a big fan of, if that is the case, I'm not a big fan of the chest to wall press handstand drill for most people because there's too many gaps. So the chest to wall press drill is this one. So in this position, and yes, it demands some lumbar flexion as you go around. So when you come through here, so that's the press drill. Super drill if you can go slow enough through the full range of motion. So I'd recommend what you do is you turn the other way around and go this way. And now in that position, now here I can push my low back towards the floor. And then now I can push my upper back into the wall as I come all the way down. So I would start most people on the back to wall press drill for that reason, because you can really focus on that articulation on the way down of the spine, where the other one, most people will drop halfway on that last section. So obviously it depends on the individual. So there's not like a definite way of doing it. It depends where you're at. But I recommend, and also Jefferson curls for learning to articulate the spine when you're coming up and down through the hamstrings and through the spine. That would be really good for you. So I think okay, so face out, not towards, so back to wall. So you was talking about the back to wall one. So if that's the case, I would frog your legs. So it's probably a straddle, hip flexibility, low back could be as well. But to get your low back to go closer to the wall. So if you're in this position and you're coming down here and you get stuck and your low back won't go to the wall, do this with your legs. Now my low back easily goes to the wall. So by frogging the legs, it puts you into a posterior tilt and will roll your lumbar spine more. So I'm guessing that will help. Okay, I can't even do a single wall handstand push-up. I cannot push my body up. What progression do you suggest for me? Pike push-ups while you're training your freestanding handstand. So pike push-ups are awesome for that transition between wall handstand push-ups and standard push-ups. Obviously, you need to check that your standard push-up is strong and your dips are strong enough. If you have weakness in your dips, the dips especially, I would hit your dips harder more often than your pike push-ups while you're still working on your handstand. Then start to do pike push-ups, but then as quick as possible go into eccentric handstand push-ups on the wall. So I'm not a big fan of spending too much time on the pike push-ups when you can progress, but when you're in that in-between, pike push-ups are awesome. Dips are like, everyone should have that foundation of dips, chin-ups and things like that, rows. Yeah, cool. Try that one back to wall, and that should help you around that lower back. Any other questions, guys? I normally do these for about an hour, so I've got like 20 minutes if the questions keep coming in. Trying to get the level right for my YouTube videos, the content I put out, and for my app as well, like trying to work out what most people want. Obviously, I know what most people want: press handstand, handstand push-ups, one-arm handstand and things. But to try and get the correct levels, so when I put videos out, content out, programs on my app, it's really good to understand what level you guys are at. So obviously what the goal is, but what level you're at. So, are you a 2-second handstand holder in the middle of the room, Are you a 60-second handstand in the middle of the room and working towards the more advanced stuff? So it'd be really interesting to know. How do you prevent hyperextension when doing handstands? I'm experiencing elbow pain. So hyperextension of the elbow? I'm assuming you mean hyperextension of the elbow. Yes. So it's actually seen as a really good thing for hand balancers. I know hand balancers that have purposely trained hyperextension. And if you watch, good one-arm handstanders, my right arm does it a little bit now. So I'm from someone that couldn't straighten my arm to now in a one-arm handstand. Like if you watch, I don't know if you'll do it now because I'm not warmed up, but if you watch my right elbow, see how close that comes in towards the midline. So that constantly pushing in, like seeing a hyperextended position there is actually like very, very good for handstands. The downside is that we're sort of pushed away from training it. So a lot of people that naturally hyperextend don't spend time in the hyperextended position because they're scared to be there. So the conditioning isn't there. So then when you handstand, you've spent all this time not conditioning that position, and then you put all of your body weight into that hyperextended position, and it's just too much too soon. So what I recommend that you do is work out some easier conditioning positions, and it might be feet on the box, feet on a chair, and being in like a pike position, and just spending time hyperextended, but pushing away as hard as you can. So you're really pushing up and away into that hyperextension, and just building conditioning in that position first. Because I'm guessing if you're hyperextended at the elbows, you're also hyper flexible everywhere else. So I'd embrace that. It's fantastic, but we need to fill that full range of motion with conditioning and strength and not have any gaps. Last thing you want to do is be practicing a handstand here and then suddenly pop into hyperextension. But because all your conditioning's been there, suddenly there's like all the weight's there and then suddenly it's there. It's just too much. So I hope that helps. But it's a positive. Don't see it as a negative. Like that's a very, very sought after position. How many straight arm press to handstands can you do nowadays? In a row, press handstand, or standing ones, I can always get 10. I don't train higher repetitions. Like occasionally I'll do high reps, but most of my training is lower repetitions because I'm trying to push the intensity a bit more. So like a lot of the press stuff, I'm doing planche work with it. So they're normally singles or doubles. But standing straddle press, I can get 10. I have just gymnastic rings and some free weights. I wanted to get the most out of myself. Goals are flexibility, strength, stamina, aesthetics, of course. A few quick tips would be much helpful. I've got ring only workouts on my YouTube. I'm sure I've put them on there as well. I've definitely got them in my app. But I've got some videos where I'm only using gymnastic rings. Gymnastic rings are awesome. You can train everything with a pair of rings. But I would be, just make sure it's pretty much balanced. So you want to be doing straight arm work, so skin the cat. So that's perfect. You're getting planche demand, you're getting front lever, you're getting that full range of motion, straight arm work with the skin the cat. Support position, just to learn that first to be able to hold in the support position on the rings, dips on the rings, chin ups, and then working towards things like muscle ups, L-sit to shoulder stand on the rings. So if you only have rings, having something like the boxes, so having 2 of these steps or 2, if you have them, or you can get them 2 powerlets. That way you can train the ring skills on a fixed surface and then move them onto the rings. Because the hardest thing with some of the skills on the rings is there's such a jump up between the static version and, well, not static, the fixed P-bar version and the rings. So normally you would learn a lot of the skills on the fixed version first before taking them to the rings. But yeah, rings are fantastic. They're the number one thing I would say to get if people are on a budget or just have, want to save space and stuff. I get elbow pain when I try German hang. Yeah, so just watch your rotation of your hand. Go with what feels natural. Don't turn them right out. Put too much stress on the bicep in that position, and just have toe assist. So when you go into a German hang, put your toes on the floor or a box. So you've got like 50% of your body weight in that position, and you also want to be making sure that the rest of your setup is mobile. So doing foam roller work on the thoracic spine, opening up your pecs, opening up your lats separately or before. That way, your elbows aren't going to take the brunt of the stress. So just make sure everything else is opened up. And normally, toes to the floor. So you only put 50% of your body weight through there will help. And also, just make sure you've got a decent hang, just a standard passive hang, as a prerequisite before doing really long holds, especially in the German hang. I have a lot of wrist pain doing handstand on the floor when my fingers are facing up forward, but I have trouble balancing when I rotate my hands with fingers facing more towards the side. Any tips? Mobility is really important. So most people think they need to have crazy mobile wrists. Look at my wrists. So I can hold one arm handstands. Like I can't bend. I can't bend. Some people, I've heard that before. Someone said that you need to have 90 degrees there. Like I can't do it. I forgot what I was going to say now. So mobility through the shoulders, through the thoracic, do lots of hanging. So open everything up. So that's going to help big time. Take the hands slightly wider. So that creates more space as well. So this narrow grip is really cool in a handstand, but most people shouldn't be there. They should be wider, and they might even have a slight elbow bend because that's where their body's currently at from a mobility point of view. So don't think you have to have dead straight arms, hands close together to give yourself a bit of an out, and the same for your handstand position. So if you always demand your handstand to be a dead straight line, there's so much stress in the body, which will normally be the wrists that will handle that. But if I relax a little bit like this, now in this handstand hold, my wrists aren't feeling anything. But when I do this, I can feel my wrists now. So just relaxing the body a little bit until you get your mobility very, very good will help. And then if you really need to, you could change to a slightly different hand position by going on to powerlets, handstand blocks. You could raise the heel of the palm up slightly so it decreases the wrist angle. Make sure you're not handstanding on a really soft floor. So I don't know how gymnasts do it on that. I mean, it's conditioning because they've always done it that way. But long holds on a soft floor is so hard on the wrists because it pushes you more towards hyperextension of the wrist. Okay, my handstand balance is 10 seconds, but my kick up is not good. So sometimes I do balance, but sometimes I fall under an overbalance. So that's what you need to do is increase that balance window. So you want to be able to move forwards and backwards towards overbalance and underbalance. And then when you kick up into that window. What we don't want to do is kick up. Most people's window of balance is that big, so they never kick up to it, or they kick up to it 1 in 10. If your window of balance is that big, you'll always kick it up. And also make sure that your setup is exactly the same every time you kick up. So if I'm going to kick up and I'm not so experienced, I'm going to make sure that I place my hands down, I pick my focal point, my shoulders are on top, my hands are in the same position, my feet are in the same position, everything the same. I'm going to try and kick with as much control as I can into the position. And then if I come back down again, I'm going to do exactly the same thing again, set up all those things. So we're working with the same setup every time, and you're not changing the starting point. If you're changing where you start every time, it's going to be super, super hard to get consistency. And just make sure you're doing enough wall drills as well. So a lot of people back off on the heel pulls and toe pulls and the balance drills off the wall when they start to get a freestyle handstand, but you still need to do those drills to increase the window. So go like 50-50, so do 50% of your work on the wall first, and then the second 50% of your session, do it in the middle of the floor. Should you turn your scapula inward or outward, inward or forward when doing handstands, or just keep them flared? So I wouldn't think about shoulder blades in any way when doing a handstand. I would think about pushing. So hands above your head, obviously when you do a handstand, but in that overhead position. And then all I'm going to do is do that. So I'm pushing away. So that's going to put your scapula in the right position when you do that. What we don't want to start to do is start thinking about what we're doing with our shoulder blades or our hips in the position. We just need to get taller. It needs to be exactly the same as if you've done an overhead position with a barbell and you had a bar above your head, you wouldn't be trying to work out what to do with your body. You would just, if it was really heavy, you would just push up against it so the weight gets dissipated through your body line into the floor. We want exactly the same thing to happen in a handstand. So when you're in a handstand, I should be able to push down on your toes, and that load that I'm pushing down dissipates through your body into the floor. So that push, that elevation is the main thing to focus on. I wouldn't try and isolate components and turn things on or off. I would just try and push, keep the body as one segment, nice and strong, and over time things will change. Like if you're very flexible, you're gonna have more movement everywhere compared to someone who's super tight. So your shoulder blades are going to be in a different position than them, but the push is the most important thing when that one segment. How can I not fall and break my neck doing high P-bar handstands? So you want to have a really big window of balance for your handstand. So be able to move around in that handstand on the floor first to make sure you're nice and safe there. And then before you go up onto P-bars that are up here, we get super happy with this height. And you learn on turning out in different directions, and then you just add onto it. Like I don't use my super high P-bar, not P-bars, my handstand canes that much now. But the same thing applies when you're learning like one arm handstand on high canes. It's the same thing, but you could fall in 360 degrees. So you need to fill all those gaps and make sure you know how to bail out. But just be sensible. Start, this far off the floor, this far, this far, this far. You can train them up against the wall. I'm not a big fan of training them up against the wall because you're not learning balance. You're learning more confidence. It can help for entries, but I would just ideally see if you can get a setup where you're halfway, not right up tall straight away. Okay, thank you. I do use closer hands. I also just start ending sessions with hangs. I will try P-bars and see how that goes as well. I would put your hang in at the start, not at the end of your session. So think that as part of your warm-up. I would do flexibility, a basic full body flexibility routine. It might be quick. It might just last 5 minutes before you go into your handstand session, which includes a hang ideally. So that'll put your body in the right place to load on top the strength for the handstands. Calisthenics has more injury, or this is a myth? It depends what calisthenics you're doing. What I do in terms of putting it under the umbrella of calisthenics is very static, and you'll have very little injuries with what I do. One of the reasons I love doing this style of training is because I want to be doing it when I'm in 20 or 30 years' time. Like I'm 47 now, where if I was doing CrossFit or weightlifting or something like that, I'd probably have some sort of injury by now, because throwing a big barbell above your weight, above your head, doing things really fast and that, the calisthenics I do is very slow and controlled. And I prefer that from a postural point of view and a safety point of view. Thank you for the super chat. How can you bail out of it? Okay, so when you're on P-bars, it's actually, so I can't really show you in here because my P-bars, I've got these standard ones. So what you gotta think about when you come out of it. So if you go over, you want to keep your shoulder and hand more on top of each other, and you're twisting your legs and then bringing your feet down towards the floor. If you do it like that, you'll always fall with your feet first, as opposed to falling like your body flatter. So like I can't demo it here because the ceiling height's too low. But it would be like in handstand here and I go over. So if I go slowly, that happens. But I got to keep this hand and shoulder nearly on top of each other the whole time. I'll twist. I want to be able to twist a certain amount, but I'll twist, and then my feet need to come straight down. Like it's really hard. Learning to fall, like even in a standard handstand, is so hard to teach because if you're practicing falling, you're not actually falling. Like it's a turn and an exit. Falling happens when you least expect it. So unfortunately, like it's something that you'll just have to work out in the moment. But obviously, prepping as best you can for it and making sure that you don't have anything sharp or heavy, or just be sensible around it. I've seen lots of dodgy stuff especially in handstand classes where the rooms are really busy, but they're normally because there's so many people trying to do things at once. But that's the biggest thing. Make sure that your space is clean and you come down, keep that shoulder on top, turn, rotate, feet come down first. Please perform a handstand to planche. I'm training handstand to planche tomorrow, but I can do, let's try a straddle planche. So I'm trying to get my straddle planche better at the moment. This will probably be high hip. So I've turned the hands out wider, open to straddle, push up into protraction as I start to come down. Yeah, that's the best I'm going to do without warming up towards it. But that's the sort of level I'm at. Goal is to try and get the hip more open and bring the legs back together more towards full planche type position with the straddle planche. But that's where I'm at from a Cole point of view. Hey mate, I appreciate your videos. Very helpful content. Awesome. Keep any requests coming as well. Like it's so important, or so helpful to know what level you guys are at, so I can give the right content. As a beginner, is it better to handstand with elbows locked or slightly bent? Again, push. Just really focus on that. So pushing up at 80% of your capacity. So most people who are beginning handstands don't quite have the flexibility to handstand. So the handstand, even when they're pushing, the handstand's going to look like this. And then over time, it's going to push out. So like if you watch that handstand to planche that I done there, I'm doing the very best I can as I come down to that planche position to keep my elbows locked. But if you look at my right arm, it's probably got a slight bend in it. I'm doing everything I can to try and push that out. But when I max out, my elbow still bends very slightly. I'm trying to get rid of that. So over time, I'll improve. But a beginner in handstands will be exactly the same. So they'll slowly improve their range of motion, their control, and they won't be so wide. They'll start to bring their hands together, and then they'll eventually have straight arms. Super important, straight arms for like one arm handstand and that like that. If you're looking for a clean stacked position, if you're breakdancing, then that's something different. Okay, guys, I normally do an hour, and we're at 58 minutes. So any other questions before we finish? Rosie's crying. I don't know. She's wants to go out, I reckon. Think, guys, if I've missed any questions as well, let me know. I think I've got everything. Should stop saying guys and girls. Okay, your progression is 40 push-ups, 15 pike push-ups, 15 Suedo push-ups. Yeah, nice. But think like strength and conditioning of those type of movements is fantastic. But if you really want the calisthenic skills where your balance is involved, like make sure you're hitting balance a lot. So keep that ticking over. Keep making sure you've got all the strength work happening, but balance is key. The reason I can do 10 handstand push-ups, 10 press handstands, and things like that at my old age is because my balance is so good. So I'm using, half the energy that someone else is using to do that same movement. So if I'm not putting any strength or energy into the balance, I can use all my strength and also stay in an efficient position. So the balance is so key on all of these movements. As soon as you lose balance or position, you have to put in 10 times the energy, 10 times the strength into the position. Okay, guys, we've hit the hour. I'm gonna turn off now. Like I say, I do these every Friday, or the plan is to do these every Friday. But feel free to stick any questions down in the comments, and I will answer them next live session. Did my routine change as I got older, like doing less? I mean, I started this style of training at 37, and I'm now 47. I definitely do less intense volume now, but no, I don't think it's changed that much. I just got wiser with my training just from the years of coaching now. These type of skills, I've learned a lot from all the different people that I've trained with, and all the progressions have changed. So I've just got wiser with my training, listen to my body, do less weighted stuff. So I'm not doing I stopped doing the weighted handstand push-ups, stopped doing. I still do weighted chins occasionally, but I'm just a bit more sensible, I suppose. Okay, guys, I'm going to sign off. Drop any comments, questions, likes, subscribe will be appreciated. Oh, awesome. I'm 50 and started learning months ago. Now can do handstand wall assist for 2 minutes. That's fantastic. All right, guys, I'm out here. I'll speak to you soon.